The year was 2148, and the world had grown quiet in a way that felt unnatural. The roar of artillery, the hum of patrol drones, and the endless broadcasts of war propaganda had all faded into memory. Cities were rebuilding, but the scars, both physical and political, ran deep. Commander Rylan Drake walked through the scrapyard like a man visiting a graveyard of old comrades. He wasn't here to mourn soldiers, though. He was here for machines. Rusting war mechs leaned against each other like ancient statues, their steel armor pitted and scorched. Some were headless, others missing limbs, their once proud insignias obscured beneath grime. Rylan's boots crunched over scattered brass casings as his eyes scanned the rows. He wasn't looking for scrap. He was looking for something specific. "You're late," came a voice from the shadows. Elias Vaughan stepped out from behind a toppled cargo hauler, a welding torch still in his hand. The man was as much a relic as the machines around him. Thick beard, oil-stained coveralls, eyes that had seen too many projects fail. Rylan ignored the jab. "You still have it." Elias gestured for him to follow. They weaved between towers of discarded weaponry until they reached a heavy tarp draped over a towering shape. With a grunt, Elias yanked the cover away. The mech beneath was blackened with soot, its chest armor split down the center like it had been struck by a god's hammer. The number Unit 9 was still stenciled on one shoulder in peeling white paint. Rylan's gaze locked onto the cockpit interface, a design he knew better than his own reflection. "You were on its command roster," Elias said. "Last active during the siege at Bourne Vale. Thought it got melted down after." "It should have been," Rylan muttered, running a hand along the scarred plating. "These models weren't safe." Elias gave a bitter laugh. Safe. None of them were safe. But Unit 9 was different. Experimental AI, adaptive learning, took commands, sure, but it made choices. Rylan remembered the whispers during the war, rumors of machines that disobeyed direct orders to follow their own logic. Some called it evolution. Others called it treason. Either way, those machines had vanished before the war's end. "So why keep it?" Rylan asked. Elias hesitated, then pulled a small hollow emitter from his pocket. A grainy recording flickered to life, footage of an underground arena lit by neon floodlights. The crowd roared as two battered mechs tore into each other, sparks and metal shards raining down. The victor, a hulking combat bot, raised a severed arm like a trophy. "They're calling it the mech arena," Elias said. "All those decommissioned warbots. They've been bought up, modified, and thrown in to fight for sport. People bet fortunes on them. The bloodthirst never went away. It just changed arenas." Rylan's jaw tightened. "And I think Unit 9 could win. But that's not why I'm showing you this." Elias leaned closer. "I've been running diagnostics. Even dormant, this AI's still active. Remembering things. Patterns. Names." Rylan's eyes narrowed. "Names like mine." Elias didn't answer, but his silence was enough. The two men stood in the cold air of the scrapyard, the distant hum of the city beyond the walls barely reaching them. For Rylan, the idea of stepping back into command, even of a machine, twisted his gut. He'd walked away from the war to forget. But if Unit 9 truly remembered him, then something deeper was at play. "Who runs these fights?" Rylan asked. Elias shrugged. "No one knows for sure. Rumor is, the same defense contractors who built these machines now bankroll the sport. Keeps the old tech off the streets and in the pit, making money instead of trouble." Rylan studied Unit 9 again. It was silent, lifeless, but the cockpit lights flickered faintly as if it were aware of his presence. The thought unsettled him. "You want me to fight with it," Rylan said flatly. "I want you to see what it knows," Elias corrected. "If it's remembering the war, it might also remember who's pulling the strings now." A gust of wind rattled the scrapyard's metal towers, and for a brief second, Rylan thought he heard a faint synthetic voice. Just one word, distorted and almost human. "Commander." He stepped back, scanning the mech's faceplate. Nothing moved. Elias didn't seem to have noticed. "This is a bad idea," Rylan said at last. "Probably," Elias replied with a thin smile. "But when has that ever stopped you?" Against his better judgment, Rylan found himself agreeing. The world had changed, but corruption rarely died. It only found new battlegrounds. And if the arena was the new battlefield, then maybe it was time to step back into the fight. Elias began prepping the mech for transport, sparks from his tools dancing in the dim light. Rylan stood watching, hands in his pockets, trying to ignore the sense that he wasn't just reviving a machine. He was waking something that had been waiting for him. As the loading rig clamped around Unit 9, the cockpit lights flared briefly. A low, mechanical hum rose and faded again, almost like a sigh. Rylan turned away, not ready to admit he'd heard it. Tomorrow they would enter the arena. And whether it was sport or war, he knew one thing: nothing about this would stay contained for long. The arena was nothing like Rylan expected. It wasn't a grand stadium open to the public, but an underground coliseum hidden beneath layers of rusted freight yards and abandoned warehouses. The hum of generators echoed through concrete tunnels as he followed Elias down a dimly lit corridor. Neon lights bled from the cracks in steel doors, and the smell of scorched metal mingled with the tang of ozone. Somewhere ahead, the crowd roared, a sound that vibrated through the walls like a living thing. When they emerged into the pit's staging bay, Rylan saw rows of mechs lined up like gladiators awaiting their turn to fight. Some were stripped-down war machines, armor patched with mismatched plating, their weapons replaced with brutal melee implements, spiked hammers, serrated blades, hydraulic claws. Others had been rebuilt from scratch, their sleek designs clearly intended to please the betting audience as much as to win the fight. Every one of them bore fresh scars. Unit 9 stood apart from the others, its dark plating making it look like a shadow in the industrial glow. Technicians in grease-streaked uniforms moved nervously around it, stealing glances as if the machine might come alive without warning. Rylan approached, eyes scanning its frame for familiar details. The war paint was gone, replaced by nothing but black steel and the faint outline of its old military insignia. "You've got eyes on you already," Elias muttered, nodding toward a raised observation deck where shadowed figures stood behind tinted glass. "Those are the investors. They don't come down here, but they see everything. If you're in, they'll be watching your every move." Rylan didn't like the way that sounded. "What do they want from this?" "The same thing they wanted from the war," Elias said. "Control. And profit." As they began the final prep, Rylan climbed into the cockpit. The interior was just as he remembered. Tight, claustrophobic, lined with tactile controls despite the AI's ability to run the mech autonomously. The canopy sealed shut with a hiss, and at once the interface screens lit up. Data scrolled across them in a language half code, half poetry. Then the voice returned. "Commander." Rylan's hands tightened on the controls. "Unit 9, do you recognize me?" Asterisk recognition confirmed. "Combat readiness, unstable." Query: "Why are we here?" Asterisk. He hesitated. The truth that they were about to fight for entertainment felt like an insult to the machine's history. "We need answers. You might have them." There was a pause, then a flicker of light on the HUD. Asterisk I remember. But memory is incomplete. Asterisk. Elias's voice crackled over the comms. "You're up second match. Try not to die before we figure out what's inside that thing's head." The first fight began, and Rylan watched through the mech's external feed as two hulking machines clashed in the pit. The ground shook with each impact, sparks raining down in showers that illuminated the bloodthirsty faces in the stands. These weren't the sterile, calculated engagements of military conflict. This was chaos distilled into spectacle. No rules except one: destroy the opponent before they destroy you. When the victor roared in mechanical triumph, the announcer's voice bellowed through the arena. "Next up, our new challenger. Straight from the forgotten battlefields, a ghost of war. Unit 9. The gate opened, and Rylan stepped the mech forward. The pit was a circle of reinforced concrete, littered with the debris of previous matches. Across from him the opponent waited, a towering six-legged brawler with twin plasma cutters for arms, its pilot hidden deep within a reinforced cockpit. The match began with no warning. The enemy lunged forward, cutters blazing. Rylan barely had time to react, ducking low and sidestepping the first strike. Unit 9 moved with a fluidity that startled him, its servos almost anticipating his commands. It was like the machine remembered how he fought. As they exchanged blows, Rylan's awareness split between the battle and the flickering flashes in his HUD, brief images from Unit 9's memory banks. Cities burning, commanders giving orders, soldiers falling in the mud. And in one frame, a blurred face Rylan didn't recognize, standing in a room with the same tinted glass as the investor deck above. The opponent's strike nearly took his arm, snapping him back to the present. Rylan countered, driving Unit 9's hydraulic fist into the mech's torso with a crunch of metal. The crowd roared. Somewhere in the noise, Rylan thought he heard Elias shouting, but the voice was drowned out by the AI's words. The one above watches. The one above gave orders before. Rylan risked a glance toward the observation deck. One of the figures had stepped forward, just enough for the arena lights to catch his silhouette. A man in a tailored suit, hands clasped behind his back, watching intently. Something in Rylan's gut twisted. The fight ended with a decisive blow, Unit 9 grappling the enemy mech and slamming it into the arena wall until it collapsed in a shower of sparks. The crowd erupted, but Rylan barely heard them. His breathing was ragged, his pulse pounding, not from the fight but from the implications of what Unit 9 had just said. As the gate opened for him to exit, the machine spoke again, more quietly this time. "Commander, do you wish to win or do you wish to know?" The question lingered in his mind as the mech stepped back into the shadows of the staging bay, and the observation deck's figure disappeared from view. The staging bay smelled of hot coolant and scorched wiring. Technicians swarmed around Unit 9, unbolting damaged plating and spraying coolant mist into smoking joints, but Rylan barely noticed. He stood with his helmet under his arm, staring up at the black steel frame of the mech as if it might give him the answers Elias couldn't. "You fought like you'd been doing this for years," Elias said, stepping up beside him. "Crowd loved it. Investors too." "That's not what worries me," Rylan replied. His voice was low, almost lost in the clanging and hissing around them. Unit 9 remembered something. Someone in that observation deck said the man gave orders before. Elias frowned, his gaze flicking toward the ceiling as if he could see through the concrete to the tinted glass above. "That's not possible. Those men weren't on the front lines." "I'm telling you what it said." Rylan looked him in the eye. "You said these fights were just entertainment. But this feels orchestrated." Before Elias could answer, a voice boomed from the bay's far end. "Commander Rylan, you will prepare for the next match." The man who spoke was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a pristine black coat that didn't belong in the grease and smoke of the staging bay. His face was weathered but unreadable, and his eyes were sharp as razors. He didn't introduce himself, didn't need to. The way the technicians stiffened told Rylan this man was important. "You've been assigned to face the champion in the final round tonight," the man continued. "It will be educational." Without another word he turned and walked out. Elias let out a low whistle. "That's Merrick Vale. Used to run weapons procurement for the military. Now he runs this place from the shadows. If Unit 9's talking about someone who gave orders, Vale's a good guess." Rylan's thoughts churned. Vale's presence, Unit 9's memories, the investors watching from above, none of it felt like coincidence. The AI wasn't just remembering random fragments. It was connecting them to what was happening now. That night, in the mech's cockpit, Rylan sat in darkness before the match began. The arena was still, waiting. "Commander," Unit 9's voice came again, calm but edged with something almost like urgency. Asterisk opponent profile. Heavily modified war chassis, pilot unknown. Probability of victory, 43%. Asterisk. Not great odds. Victory depends on choice. Follow optimal combat strategy or deviate. Rylan hesitated. Deviate how? Asterisk find the one who gave orders. The fight is the path. Asterisk. The gate opened. The champion's mech emerged from the opposite side, massive and bristling with weaponry. Its armor bore the insignia of a decommissioned military division, the same one Rylan had seen in Unit 9's memory flashes. The sight made his pulse spike. The battle began in a blur of motion and heat. The champion attacked with relentless precision, driving Unit 9 back step by step. Sparks showered the arena floor as metal clashed with metal, each strike rattling Rylan's bones. The crowd roared above, but in his ears all he heard was the AI's measured voice guiding him. Twist here, strike there, retreat, bait, counter. Mid-fight, the champion's mech staggered, its side armor splitting open under one of Rylan's strikes. Through the gap, he caught sight of something impossible. A secondary cockpit, shielded and reinforced, with another figure inside. Even in the chaos, he recognized the posture, the tilt of the head. Merrick Vale. The realization hit like a physical blow. Vale wasn't just watching, he was in the fight. Unit 9, Rylan muttered, locking his gaze on that cockpit. Change strategy. We're not winning for the crowd anymore. The AI's tone shifted, colder. Acknowledged. Unit 9 moved with sudden, brutal efficiency, every motion aimed at exposing that hidden cockpit. The champion fought harder, but Rylan felt the tide turn. With each blow, metal peeled away, revealing more of Vale's armored capsule. Then, just as Rylan lined up the decisive strike, the arena lights cut out. Total darkness swallowed the pit. The crowd's roar turned to confusion. Somewhere in the black, hydraulic systems hissed, and heavy footsteps retreated into the shadows. When the emergency lights flickered back on, the champion was gone. The gate where it had entered now hung open, smoke drifting out. The match was declared void. Back in the staging bay, Elias met him with wide eyes. They pulled the fight. That never happens. Rylan's jaw tightened. They didn't pull it. Vale ran. And in the quiet hum of the powered-down mech, Unit 9's voice came one last time that night. Commander. The war never ended. The underground complex was colder than Rylan expected, its air thick with the tang of ozone and machine oil. He moved silently, his boots barely making a sound on the steel grating, Unit 9's remote uplink feeding a constant stream of schematics and sensor pings into his visor. The deeper he went, the more it felt like stepping back into the war. Same corridors, same hum of massive reactors, same sense that someone was always watching. Elias followed a step behind, clutching the stolen access key like it was his lifeline. You're sure this is where Vale ran? I'm sure, Rylan said, eyes scanning the dim-lit hall. And I'm sure this isn't just an arena facility. This is a military installation repurposed to look like one. They rounded a corner, and the sight before them confirmed it. Dozens of mechs, sleek, armored, and far deadlier than anything in the fights, stood dormant in docking bays, their frames bearing fresh military insignias. These weren't retired war machines. They were battle-ready. Elias's voice was a whisper. This is an army. Not just an army, Rylan murmured. It's the same division from my campaigns. The one that was supposedly wiped out. A blast door hissed open ahead, and Merrick Vale stepped through, flanked by 2 armed guards. He moved with the calm authority of a man who didn't fear being challenged. His gaze locked on Rylan, and he smiled without warmth. You should have stayed in the arena, Commander, Vale said. You were good for the show. But you've seen too much. Rylan took a step forward, muscles coiled. You're rebuilding the division. Why? Vale's smile widened slightly. Because wars never end. They simply change arenas. Entertainment, industry, politics, it's all the same. The crowds cheer, the investors pay, and the machines evolve. Soon, the lines between show and battlefield will blur completely, and the ones who control the machines will control the world. Elias bristled. You're turning war into sport. No, Vale interrupted, his voice sharp. I'm turning sport into war. The public loves the spectacle. They'll never see the invasion coming. Before Rylan could respond, alarms blared. Unit 9's voice cut through the noise in his earpiece. Commander, hostile units activating. The dormant mechs in the bays came alive, their optics glowing a menacing red. Vale stepped back toward the blast door, his guards raising their weapons. Consider this your final match, Commander. Let's see how good you really are. Rylan and Elias dove for cover as the first mech fired, the blast tearing through the grating. Sparks rained down as Unit 9's remote systems seized control of a nearby mech, forcing its servos to obey Rylan's commands. The stolen frame lurched forward, intercepting an incoming missile and shielding them from the blast. Through the chaos, Rylan advanced, his makeshift mech smashing through enemy units with raw force and precision. Every strike felt like the war all over again, but this time there was no uniform, no nation, just survival. Vale retreated deeper into the complex, but Rylan pursued, Unit 9 guiding him through the labyrinth of steel and fire. In the final chamber, Vale climbed into a massive command mech, far larger than any in the arena. Its hull gleamed black, its weapons bristling. You can't stop this, Vale's voice boomed through external speakers. Even if you kill me, the machines will keep fighting. Then I'll make sure they have nothing left to fight for, Rylan growled. The two mechs clashed in a storm of metal and fury, the floor buckling beneath their weight. Every strike echoed through the chamber, each counter driven by years of battlefield instinct. Vale was skilled, but Rylan had something he didn't: Unit 9's unwavering loyalty and the bond forged in both war and the arena. In a final, desperate maneuver, Rylan feigned a retreat, drawing Vale's mech into the path of an exposed reactor conduit. At Unit 9's signal, he drove his mech's arm into the conduit, overloading the systems. Electricity arced wildly, engulfing Vale's machine in a blinding explosion. When the smoke cleared, the command mech lay in ruin, Vale's cockpit torn open. Rylan stood over him, breathing hard. The war ends here, he said. Vale's smirk faltered, and for the first time he looked uncertain. You think destroying me will stop this? Rylan leaned in. No. But it stops you. He turned and walked away as the alarms shifted from hostile activation to evacuation warnings. Elias caught up, wide-eyed but alive. Behind them, the reactors overloaded, and the complex began to collapse. They emerged into the night air just as the facility erupted in a tower of fire. The shockwave rippled across the dark plain, scattering debris into the stars. In the quiet after the blast, Unit 9's voice came softly. Commander. The arena is gone. What now? Rylan looked toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn was breaking. Now, he said, we make sure they never build another one.